How have the exam boards responded with respect to their listening papers? Here are the variables that I've identified, and I'll talk about them in more detail later. It could be that you're interested in the total marks that they get. So total marks are 40 for all except AQA Foundation, which is 32. All of the listening question types are in English, but what types are they and what's the balance within those types? So they're multi-choice. Do you get a cloud multi-choice, where you get certain words which you have to fit into sentences? Do you have to match things? Is it open-ended English? The number of times that something is heard. Something which has changed now is that Ofqual has not given a maximum time limit, so they could make the exam boards were free to make their exams longer, and that's what Edexcel has done. They've gone for making it so that everybody can hear it 3 times as opposed to the twice on AQA and the draft EDUCAS. I think one is particularly interesting to me is how many questions are there per segment, because that has an impact, doesn't it, on how much you have to memorise before you say what it is you understand. So I'll look at that in detail. I think that is it just one particular segment has just one question or one has 2. That's where AQA has the highest number, where you just have one listening and there's only 1 or 2 questions which are attached to it. And then it could be whether or not there's a cultural or more of a generic bias. So is it situated in the culture of the country, or is it something which, even if you don't go to the country, you might feel familiar with? So AQA and Edexcel have got a difference there. Here's an example of an analysis I've done, and in the document you'd be able to see this for all of the exercises, all of the assessments which are done. So here we've got AQA Edexcel EDUCAS, the question type, so how many are multi-choice where it's a choice of 1 out of 3, 2 out of 4, 2 out of 6, 1 out of 6, etc. Then this is the one that I think is the most significant, where for each recording, how many questions are associated with it. So for AQA, you've got 12 marks where it's 1 recording leads to just 1 question. You've got 8 where it's 1 recording leading to 2 questions. And then there are 1 recording for 4 questions, so there's just 1 of those. So that's really to do with the idea there is that this doesn't then place an undue burden on memory. So that's the way that AQA has addressed this. I think it's really good that you're thinking we don't want to make it so that someone's disadvantaged just because they've forgotten. That's one way of doing it. The other way, Edexcel, it has got more questions per recording, but you're allowed to listen to it 3 times. So for what it's worth, I think the two probably balance each other out. So less to have to remember only twice, more to have to remember 3 times. That's how I would see it. Let's see. So there's an example of what the transcripts look like, which that of itself, you can see already how with the AQA you've got shorter sections which lead to the questions and longer things, including dialogues there. AQA also does have dialogues, but it's more obvious there. So here's to demonstrate that for AQA. There we are, first question. Today it's the 12th of May, the date of my birthday. Number 1, which of those is it? So you hear that twice before you then have to say it's the birthday. 2, I'm in the year 11, which class are you in? So for number 2, which one is it? And that's to do with school. So 1 recording, 1 question. It's also in a cultural context. So some people find this a little bit artificial, but it's something which AQA has committed to, that it will set things in a cultural context. I suppose that you can say, look, this is the sort of thing that actually could happen to you. There's no reason why you shouldn't have a French friend who talks to you. So there we are. But actually, notice it is your French friend. It's not a French friend with a name. That seems to something that Edexcel has many more references to the names of people. So here's your Edexcel one. So this is the foundation, the simplest one. Remember, they go in order where it's increasingly difficult. So question 1 has got a dialogue between Ahmed and Miriam. So there are 3 things which they're said, and different people are speaking there. That's all 1 recording. And then here's the question which goes with that. So what do they say? You've actually got 3 questions which go with a longer text. So probably that's good that you do hear that 3 times so that you can concentrate on that more. So I think it's worthwhile definitely contrasting that and thinking about it before you decide which one is better for you. So 1 recording, 3 questions, but you do hear it 3 times. And there's the Educast one. I'm not going to dwell on the Educast one just because I know that everything's being redone for them. Well, not everything, but there are changes. I've done this for every paper. It took quite a long time to do, but I was intrigued to think about this whole business of cultural content or based on the experience of the student-centred versus cultural, I suppose. I mean, in the end, I do feel that both boards have obviously the fact that I've got people speaking in French and they've got French names. It's a francophone culture, but it is much more overt, I suppose, for AQA. So here, for every single item for the Listening Foundation, there is a cultural element. So it's a voice message to you, a Belgian hotel conversation you overhear. You're hearing adverts, they're authentic adverts. You overhear something about school life. There's something about the Indian Réunion. So it is very deliberately set in the culture. For AQA, so that's AQA. And then the names and the places that you hear. Actually, there are only 5 occasions where you hear a name, but it is something which will have been already highlighted in the rubric. So it'll say Anaïs and Sofiane are talking about this. So here you've got all culture, 5 names and places, and that matches their commitment. And in fact, any of the places which I mentioned would be glossed. So the contrast with the Edexcel is that their situations don't necessarily state where they are. So they are obviously meant to be with French people talking together, but it's not particularly saying you're overhearing this in a particular place. So there it's just a conversation about shopping, a conversation about a local French restaurant. And Emma it could even be an English person talking about their experience about their local French restaurant. Technology, it could be situated anywhere. Family there, actually, that is a school life, is Emma talking about it in a UK context. She's talking about uniform and this sort of thing. So this is where it's the Edexcel commitment to student focus. So they'll hear things which would be within their experience. So all of these are there any? Yes, so cultural ones here. I've put local French restaurant as being cultural reference, and also they talk about Belleville, a holiday destination. So that's, I suppose, it doesn't really say where Belleville is. I don't think it's the Belleville that I know, because it's apparently it's always sunny there. So yes. So it's really to demonstrate that they are doing what they're saying they're doing, which is making it that it's focused on the student, even if they're not abroad. And the other thing that they have said is that all of the names that they will use will be listed in the specification. They're going to limit the number of names you hear so that students are familiar with those names and won't be put off by a variety of names. And you can see that the Edexcel approach is to include more names. Those are people who are talking, whereas the AQA one tends to be it's your French friend or some French students. So they're not necessarily naming people except for that one there. So that's it. By the way, I've also put in a column for protected characteristics. I wasn't really sure about doing that because it's almost strange to be writing just because there are a variety of skin colours. For example, I've put in race, which of itself I'm not really sure what this is, but I can see that they are very definitely, both of the boards are making sure that when students look at something, they can identify with the pictures that are there. It's not based, to be honest, it's not all just white French based. It is a variety of people there. Okay, and I've put sexual orientation. You have got people where they are talking about about same-sex marriage, and you'll get also people with disabilities who are mentioned as well. So that comes through both boards. They do that in different places through their SAMs. So there, as far as the document is concerned, I've highlighted the things I've just mentioned in the document. This is to show you about the higher. So similarly, you've got less that you have to memorise for the AQA. They're shorter clauses. That's the other thing I've looked at, as well as looking at how many questions there are per recording. I've also looked at how long are they, I counted how many verbs are there in each one. So the Edexcel, it's good that you're hearing it 3 times because they tend to be longer sections and you tend to have more questions going for the recordings. So for the higher, you never get more than 2 questions per recording, whereas here, in fact, they're all 3 or more questions per recording. Distractors, by the way, that's something I looked at quite a lot in the drafts because I noticed that there was a difference, that there were some who had, I think Edexcel had fewer distractors than the AQA. And distractors, of course, are really important. I know that sometimes people can think of it as being a trick that the examiners are playing. But in the end, the exam boards have to have a discrimination for 9 grades. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That was something which Michael Gove brought in, that he wanted to have that more discrimination at the top. So you have got to have some questions which are more difficult in order to discriminate. And when you have a multi-choice, if you hear the word cinema and it's to do with cinema and you tick that, really that's making it too straightforward. You do need to have those distractors so that people are thinking more than nouns. It is to do with, well, they're talking about the present, the past or the future. And I've seen now that after the intervention from Ofqual, there's really equality there. So nearly all multi-choice questions have distractors. So in AQA, that was as it was originally, 21 out of 30. For Edexcel, originally there were only 9 of the 27 which had distractors, but now it's exactly the same, or pretty much the same as AQA having distractors. Educare Draft, by the way, had all of them had distractors. Here's an example of the highest level question. AQA makes it clear in its commentary as to which questions are the highest within its peaks and troughs. Edexcel will be the last question, I'm assuming, is the highest. So here's an example. It's showing you how with one text there, 18, you are looking for 2 answers, and then with another text, 19, there'll be 2 more answers. So there'll be a split between them. So sometimes people are concerned about things which are too demanding for these higher levels, but I do feel we need something which will make sure that there's a good rank order of the students. You do want to distinguish your 7s from your 8s from your 9s, and this is often a way of doing it. So some people will see it as a trick that you have these distractors, but you do need them. So what I've got here, people who found me shy, I needed to change, so I took part in the programme. So why do they take part in the programme? It will be to develop more confidence. So it's not exactly the same. You are having to work it out what it means. So it's really showing. If it had something like needing to change, that would have made it too easy, wouldn't it? You'd have had the word change in there. You know the word need. Wanted a greater choice in my career. That's a bit more straightforward, isn't it? Because you've got the word career there, so that's a bit more helpful. And then what I've done here in particular is to say, where is the distractor? So the distractor is even if I already had a job which was well paid. So that well paid, someone might think it's to do making money, but it isn't. And so often this is the trick we tell people, isn't it, that if you hear même si, that's always going to be pretty much an opposite of what you're expecting. So even if that were the case, I still wanted to do this. And then you're hearing this word money, importance. So it might make you think it's making money, but it's actually, money has no importance at all. So more and more when you look at these things and work out how they put together assessments, actually this is as much testing the use of the word aucune importance, no importance, as it is testing the words for a greater choice in my career and I needed to change, isn't it? Because if you didn't understand that, you might well be doing them making money. So it's a bit garbled, but you know what I mean, I hope. And then you've got the same with the second one, where I've put down what the answers are, but I've highlighted in red the bit which might confuse people. So there, I didn't want to be famous. If you'd heard the word famous, you might have thought becoming famous was the answer, but you needed to know the negative there. And then the others are a bit more straightforward, I think. So that's the AQA highest level. What about the Edexcel? So here, Fatima talking about anti-discrimination group. Which of these are correct? I think this is straightforward. We organised a competition. So the group organised a competition, that's straightforward. The only thing, you could get confused, I suppose, because they also organised a concert. But I don't think that would put people off. Lots of people joined immediately is what they think you might want to say. Actually, it's saying at the beginning there were only 20 students. So I suppose if you got the word at the beginning, you might have thought, oh, that's, yes, it was something to do with the beginning. But I think they probably get that one. So now we have more members. The group is only for older students. Is there anything there? Well, you've got all ages. Perhaps some people might think that age older. They might be confused by that. Speakers come and give talks. Yes, associations come to speak. I think that one, I don't think there's anything to put you off that one. This is the real discriminator, isn't it? Students have already set up a website. You've got a website, but it's not that they have. It's we are soon going to create. So that's showing that they need a tense. And then this is understanding just that word sans, without. Students do everything themselves, yes, because it's without the help of teachers or parents. So a little bit like the previous one where I was saying that really the test was knowing. It means no importance. Here it's knowing that sans means without. And then there's a second part to the highest question of Edexcel where you've got open questions in English. And there I think quite rightly when it comes to an open-ended thing, you don't need distractors really there because you are just saying, yeah, I actually understood that. So an international day, and by the way, it's one international day and there were two. So I think for most of them, they do give that choice. You're not expected to know everything. So that would be something I think you would train students to know that. Don't worry if you don't know all of it. So it's either the right to be different or against sexism. One type of event, it could have been meals or festivals. And what activity was there? A big discussion online. I think they get there. And what shows they were popular? 30,000 people came. So having looked at those two, it may well be that that's something which you're interested in to say, which one do you think discriminates the best for the highest level candidates? As I've done for the others, there's the same story really, that AQA has, this time the majority are cultural, 33. I identified some as being generic, where it's an announcement about a supermarket. It didn't particularly say it was a supermarket in France, but I suppose you expect it. All of this, it's obvious really because it's in French, isn't it? But and then as far as proper nouns and names, you've got more there mentioned, but they are all mentioned in the rubric. It'll say who you're going to hear. And they have got proper nouns as well, like la manche is one of the nouns that you're expected to know. And then the protected characteristics there, they've got race, disability and sexual orientation. And AQA, there are more cultural ones here relatively, I would say, in that you've got the Belleville one, which we had before, but also events supporting diversity in France. It particularly says it's in France. And then proper nouns, quite a lot of names which are mentioned there, but they are names that they will know because they're in the spec. The same people come up, in the exams. And there you've got we've got an analysis of that in the document that I put together.